Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about the 2020 U.S. presidential primary and next level shenanigans, and why you should do a write-in and not vote for Joe Biden or vote for President Trump, and why write-ins are so important. All right, let's get into it. All right, so today what I want to talk about in particular that sparked this idea is just a simple Western film. The movie is named Stagecoach, the Texas Jack Story. I am not suggesting you go watch this movie. I watch a lot of Westerns because I just absolutely love Westerns, and for a whole lot of reasons. One, they're about a simpler time. They're action films. I love action films. They have a very specific frame, right? You know what you're going to get. You're going to get cowboys. You're going to get Native Americans. You're going to get cows and horses. You're going to get stagecoaches. You know, there's not going to be any laser guns. There's not going to be any, there's a whole lot of things that are just left out. The frame is very, very simple. And I'm also, just absolutely fascinated by American Westerns because, one, they're inherently Western. I absolutely love that. I like American films. And they're about a really unique time in our history, right? Most Western movies are in the time of Reconstruction. And so this was a really unique time where America had gone through the absolute most brutal war that we had ever gone through. I think... Yeah, so I think World War II was more to that point. It's one of the top two wars that America has ever suffered. Just an absolute massive amount of people died a massive amount of Americans died in the Civil War, and so afterwards the country was recovering, and there was this time of unification and us deciding that we were going to be a nation together forever, the South and the North. It's just a truly incredibly unique period, and the stories are really compelling. And by setting this really tight frame, I feel like they focus on people, on actual people, and how people interact with each other. Some of the the wealth class disparities are stripped out. Westerns are fantastic. Now, this was not a particularly good Western movie. I watched it on some like super jank streaming service for free. It wasn't even on one of the majors. It wasn't like on Amazon or YouTube or anything. And it really wasn't, and it was a good story, but it had a low budget, right? And that, and I do love those panning, beautifully colored, sky shots and crane shots of, multiple cowboys riding fast across a field. I don't think that stuff is small. I think it's big. Movie making is a craft, and when you have a low budget, it can seriously restrict what you put on screen, right? And this movie suffered from that, right? But it had a really, really fascinating aspect in it. So it told the story of a real man by the name of Nathaniel Reed, and it told about how he robbed a whole bunch of stagecoaches, right? And so in this movie, very clearly, this stagecoach robber is presented as a hero, right? And the stagecoach robber, his real name was Nathaniel Reed. He came to be known as Texas Jack, right? And a whole lot of revisionism has made this person into something of a hero, right? Well, first of all, let's put the obvious out there: robbers aren't heroes, right? So I kind of rejected the whole premise of this film, but it was a very interesting film, and I really enjoyed it. It starred Trace Atkins, who I believe is a country western singer. By the way, I am a huge music fan of just about every genre but country. I am not a country music fan, so I was not aware of... I don't know a single Trace Atkins songs, but I knew enough to... I was like, who is this guy? So I looked him up, and he's a country western singer, right? And he was in this movie, and he did a great job playing Nathaniel Reed, Texas Jack. So the movie shows you how Texas Jack did his job, right? He had two compatriots, people that he used to help him rob stagecoaches. And the movie also talked about why he robbed stagecoaches. So at this point in the, we're talking like the 1880s, 1890s, somewhere in there. And at this point, the railroads are up and running, and they have a lot of security, right? And so when you went onto a train, they had a whole bunch of people on there. And when you hit a train, which always carried money, there's lots of money to be gotten when you robbed a train, right? But the reality is it was dangerous because the railroads would hire real, well-heeled agents who would harm you if you attempted to rob their stagecoaches. And so there would, and basically Texas Jack actually talked in the movie, said, if we go onto these railroads, if we rob trains, they are very well protected now because the railroad companies pay to have them protected. Whereas the stagecoaches, they were much more distributed, and they went over roads that were not nearly as and with a stagecoach, you literally could not fit a whole lot of agents on there, right? Just the economics of the transportation for a stagecoach, you could have one guard at most, right? A driver and a guard, right? And the reality, so at most you're going to deal with 2 people, right? And then the passengers, generally, the passengers were not going to do anything when a stagecoach was robbed. So it was much safer for Nathaniel Reed to rob these stagecoaches. So the movie shows multiple robberies from Nathaniel Reed, Texas Jack, and how he did this, right? And so 9 out of 10 times he did the following, right? Him and his compatriots would ride up on the stagecoach. They were wearing masks. They had rifles and pistols, and they'd ride up. They'd surprise the stagecoach, and it could be like, "Hey, stall your stagecoach. Stop your stagecoach. We're here to rob you. If you don't, we'll shoot you." Right? Now, we're supposed to believe Nathaniel Reed was a hero, because he told his compatriots no killing, right? But the reality is they carried loaded weapons, and they were going up against people who were also carrying ordnance, right? And once you put that 2 things, when you have loaded ordnance on both sides of the fence, there's a distinct possibility people are going to have a life exit. That is a bad situation, very bad, right? And it puts a ton of danger for every single person on that stagecoach, and for those poor stagecoach drivers who were driving those. So, like, the idea that Texas Jack was anything but a robbing villain is ridiculous, right? He was just whatever stories he told himself to justify all this was ridiculous. But there was a next level of shenanigans. So let's talk about that, because that's the whole point of this video. So he would ride up, and with his compatriots, they would be wearing masks. Boy, has the definition of masks changed recently. So they would ride up wearing their masks, present their ordnance, threaten the guards on the guard and the driver on the stagecoach. Sometimes it was just a driver. Say, "Give us all the money on the stagecoach," and then they'd ride out, right? After they got what they were supposed to need. And also, to be clear, they would unhitch the horses, slap the horses on the butt, and make all the horses run away. And so now you've stranded those. You've stranded the driver. You've stranded the passengers, and that and all the cargo there is stranded, right? So it's going to take a day or 2 to get them. It was a mess. It was a lot. So that is straight villainy, right? That is just straight villainy, right? And I was like, oh my goodness, that's terrible. Texas Jack was a terrible person. He shouldn't have done all these terrible things to all these poor people, right? Well, it got worse, right? And now let's talk about next level shenanigans, all right? So what is next level shenanigans? So they showed this one situation where Texas Jack and his 2 compatriots, they're out in out and about, and they decide, okay, it's time to rob a stagecoach. And one of the compatriots rides up and says to Texas Jack, "Hey, they're riding in hard. They've been hearing about all these robberies, so they're just hightailing it, and they're coming through fast, so fast that they just might sweep past us, right?" So Texas Jack goes, "You know what? I ain't up for riding down a stagecoach today. I don't want to work hard, right?" And so he does some next level shenanigans. I want to talk about this, right? So he comes up. And he stands in front of the, he comes up and he stands on the side of the road. And he waves down the stagecoach, right? And he's just dressed nice, all in black and white. And he's worn his best, he's taken off his rough duster. And he's actually taken off his coat, right? And so the stagecoach driver, with a guard, they stop. And he says to that guard, hey, I was on the way to my father's funeral. And my dad died. And I was on my way to the father's funeral. And I just got super drunk. And I wandered out here into the forest. I don't have my coat. I don't know where I am. And I really need to get back so I can, so I can mourn with my family. Right? So the stagecoach guy is like, well, that's great, but that's your problem. We're going to go. And then Texas Jack presses him. He says, listen, I understand you guys have somewhere to be, but can you just help a person out? I got drunk. My dad died. And I really just need your help. Can you be a human being and help me? Right? And he says this in a very genuine and sincere way. Right? And the stagecoach says, yeah, no problem. And I'm sorry. Last thing Texas Jack says, can you give me a blanket? I don't have my coat. Can you just give me a blanket? Right? And the stagecoach goes, yeah, we're going to go on our way, but we'll give you a blanket first. And then he tells the guard, go around back to the trunk of the stagecoach and give this man one of our blankets. Right? So the guard goes around back to the stagecoach, and out pops one of the compatriots and says, hey, with ordnance, and says, hey, we're robbing you. Right? And guess what? Because you're reaching in there for a blanket, you ain't got your ordnance ready. And then Texas Jack whips out his ordnance and says to the driver, you're robbed, trickery, you're tricked, right? And we get everything you have, right? Now I'll tell you right now, it is villainous. It is villainous to rob a stagecoach. You're taking people's lives into your hands. People could have a possible life exit. You're riding up like a villain. You got your mask on. You got your ordnance out. You're threatening people, right? But I'll tell you right now, that is nothing compared to begging for a blanket and then robbing somebody when they give you a blanket, when they agree to help you. That is 10 times worse. I'll tell you right now, there's the upstairs place and the downstairs place. And there's a special circle for people in the downstairs space who do the second one. That is far worse than the first. And the reason why is when Texas Jack did that, he was breaking society. Right? People heard that story and they're like, do not help human beings in need. That breaks society. That is a level of villainy that is so outrageously low and so much worse than the first that there should be a special circle in the downstairs place for those people. That is unforgivable, in my opinion. It is next level shenanigans, right? That's exactly what we're seeing right now in the 2020 U.S. presidential primary, okay? Joe Biden is our Democratic candidate. Now, here's the reason you should absolutely not vote for him, and you should do a write-in. This is next level shenanigans, not from Joe Biden, but from the Blue Power base. They are saying that this nation does not have a single person, not a single person, younger than a decade past retirement, right? And that Joe Biden's place is in leadership and not mentorship, right? And here's the kicker, right? When you have the hardest job in the world and you need a real competitor, this is go time. We needed the Blue Power base to put up a real candidate. And instead, what they're saying is, listen, the hardest job in the world should be done by somebody who is promising to be the first 86-year-old president. And that the presidency should be held by someone who is 2 decades past the age of retirement. That breaks society. It means mentorship is dead, right? Because if it's good for Biden, Joe Biden, and it's good for the for the Blues, it's good for society, and you can keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And it threatens retirement age. If Joe Biden is successful, this would mean there is absolutely no reason to keep the retirement age at 66. It should be immediately brought up to 76. It should be increased by a decade. Right? It just levels proof. It supplies proof that the retirement age should be raised by a decade. And trust and believe the Republicans will jump right on that. Right? Because it'll save billions. It'll save trillions, actually. It will be the biggest, like, you think tax breaks or something? Wait till you see Republicans get a hold of raising the retirement age by a decade, which Joe Biden will lay the foundation for. Okay? Especially if he gets what he wants, which is to be the first 86-year-old president. An 86-year-old president. Anybody who votes for Joe Biden is voting to have an 86-year-old president. It's outrageous. It also means, right, and the reason why it's next level shenanigans is it's saying we're going to unhinge logic from voting. That breaks society. That breaks society. It is also massively disrespectful to the youth of this nation. And who is the youth? Kamala Harris, Andrew Yang, Beto O'Rourke. Biden is saying, I at 86 years old, will be a better president than you would be at an age well below retirement. That is an outrageous statement. That is saying that he is immune from age. And frankly, he's not. The human body decays, period. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden, right? And all of it decays, the physical and the mental. Like, these aren't debatable facts. This is science, right? That's another thing. As the Democrats are begging the Republicans to pay attention to society, to pay attention to science, they're proving that you can ignore science whenever you want. And the idea that an 86-year-old president is a good idea is flat out ignoring science. This is an experiment that has never been done. There's only one piece of evidence that shows what happens when you take somebody past retirement age who is older than the oldest president we've ever had, which Joe Biden is, okay? He will be, when he starts, he will be older than the oldest president is when they ended, right? So you have to take the science that we have, which is Bernie Sanders, October 2019. Science, that's an experiment that's been run, and we saw exactly what happened. Bernie, October 2019. That's what happened, right? So the reality is the idea that with a pandemic, a melting earth, and incredibly complex problems, the idea that an 86-year-old president is a good idea is just an absolute pushback and rejection of all science that exists. That there is no science that shows that the human body in the mental or the physical capacity does anything but decay after, especially after the age of retirement, right? Which the entire nation has made a social contract to say, we will pay you to stop working. And the last thing I'll say is, it is next level shenanigans, because Joe Biden is not a terrible person. He does have value as a mentor. But saying that all mentorship should die, and that every single 86-year-old person in the nation should clutch and grasp at the last piece of power they can make until it just slips through their clawed fingers, it's next level shenanigans. And we cannot reward it with a vote. Do not vote for Joe Biden. Do a write-in, right? And do not vote for Donald Trump. We need to tell these parties that what they're putting up is absolutely not acceptable, and we will not reward them with an honest vote. All that's my opinion. I'm more than willing to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.